Today was the idea of fake news and the balance between tolerating certain amount of fake news and the problem of religious censor. So I think il faut me signer le truc là, ça circule là le truc. C'est 2 fois. Hier au GP. Ok. It's okay. We're ready? Okay. So you remember the subject? Everybody remembers the subject from yesterday? No problem. We went through all this. Just to remember, the words we saw were tactics yesterday, taking a road, put forward, threat, pithy, that was the word of the week, blurring the boundary, mulling, a glimpse, checkered past, barely, landmark, errant, ruthless, clumsily, obnoxious, and to brandish. Okay, those were the words we saw yesterday. I'll print up these words for you with their synonyms, and I'll give them to you before the end of the week, okay? You will have them all, don't worry. And then I showed you the 4 questions and the essay question. I showed you my answers, remember? I showed you that when I write, the idea is you start with a hook, you move from the hook to the thesis statement, from the thesis statement to subtopic 1, subtopic 2, subtopic 3 is possible. If you do 2, it's great. Transition refers back to thesis and subtopic 1, refers back to subtopic 2, subtopic 3, reverse hook, I'm now in the conclusion, rephrasing main topic and subtopics, global, and statement of call to action. So I just want to make sure we're all clear about the format of the essay. Are there any questions about that? Is the format clear? You get the idea, okay? I'm a teacher. You don't have to necessarily do something that complicated or use that much vocabulary. The idea is to go in that direction. It's to go in that direction, okay? Don't put too much pressure on yourself. The idea is just to move in that general direction, okay? Right. Let's do the same thing again. So what do you think this article is going to be about?
It's going to be about the situation in Turkey, the political situation.
What is the political situation in Turkey today?
Last year, I think in September, there was a coup that failed against President Erdogan.
Okay, the Gulen movement,
Yes. And there was a severe repression against the soldiers who made the coup or people who participated to it.
Okay.
And also lots of Germans were killed.
Okay. Journalists, judges. Okay. But what is unusual here? Turkey has arrested Amnesty International's local director. What could be different? What Erdogan has done until recently is arrest Turkish people. Be they journalists, judges, people in the military or whatever, it's been Turkish people. Here we've got Amnesty International's local director. So is there something different here? Is something changing?
He's arrested, a member of a human rights organization that
an international. Okay, and not so long ago he arrested a young French photojournalist, Le Bureau, right? So he's starting to arrest people that are no longer just, Turkish people. It's no longer an internal problem. He's starting to arrest people who are monitoring or regarding or looking at what he's doing in the country. So clearly, the problem is escalating, isn't it? Okay? So, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the article, and then I'm going to give you some synonyms that you have to find, okay? So let's go through the article quickly, and then I'll go to the synonyms. You can note the synonyms you have to find, and then I'll put the article back up on the screen, okay? But let's just start by moving through the article really quickly. Let's do the first paragraph.
It was the sort of intervention on behalf of a persecuted opposition politician that Amnesty International carries out hundreds of times a year. In 1998, after Recep Tayyip Erdogan, then the mayor of Istanbul, was jailed for a speech in which he read out a religiously themed poem. The human rights group termed him a prisoner of conscience and wrote to the government demanding his release. 19 years later, Mr. Erdogan, now Turkey's president, presides over an increasingly authoritarian regime, and his police force has arrested Amnesty International owned staff along with other human rights activists. So it was to Mr. Erdogan that the group found itself writing last week to demand the release of detainees.
Excellent. Next paragraph.
More than 1,500 people have been...
How many?
50,000.
Good.
People have been jailed in the purge that followed the attempted coup in Turkey on July 15th.
July what?
So 15th?
15th.
15th? Last year.
First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. Okay?
Last year, but the latest arrest nevertheless shocked human rights advocates. It's only because the colleagues were the targets on
Were they what?
targets
Okay.
on July 5th.
July
5th.
5th. Okay.
Turkish police detained 10 human rights activists attending a cybersecurity training session on suspicion of membership in an armed terrorist organization. Those arrests include Ellison, director of Amnesty International Turkey's branch, and 2 foreign trainers. A month earlier, the chairman of the branch board, Taner Kilik, has been jailed on similar accusations.
Okay, not so bad. Next paragraph.
Other rights organizations and a few politicians, including Katy Perry, a Dutch member of the Ukraine Parliament, and Carl Bildt, the former Prime Minister of Sweden, have called for the activists to be freed immediately, but on July 11th, Turkish authorities extended the 10 activists' detention for another week. We will observe this weekend's national commemoration of the anniversary of the failed coup from jail.
Very good, good. Next paragraph.
Turkey's government blamed the military rebellion on the Gulen movement, a secretive Islamic sect, claiming it cracked down aimed at rooting out the movement members and held democratic. In fact, it also targeted the political opposition, the independent judiciary, and the free press. More than 4,000 judges and lawyers have been dismissed, and over 120 journalists are in prison, more than in other countries in the world.
Very good. Okay. Is your voice back? Good. Next one.
Over the past 3 weeks, to protest against mass arrests, Kemal, the leader of Turkey's opposition Republican People's Party (CHP), led a march for justice from Ankara to Istanbul. When the march reached Istanbul, hundreds of thousands of demonstrators came down to rally. But the march could not be seen as a sign that Turkey's civil society remains strong, says John Amnesty International Bureau
Dalhusen.
Amnesty International Bureau Director. In fact, its groups operate
Good, your voice is definitely better. Good. You want to do the next one?
So far, most other countries have either issued empty condemnations of Turkey's human rights violations or ignored them entirely.
Entirely. Good.
The West has a strong interest in maintaining friendly relations with Mr. Erdogan. The European Union depends on him to enforce a deal struck in March 2016 to limit the number of migrants coming to Europe. America and other NATO members rely on Turkish cooperation in Syria's civil war and the fight against Islamic State. And they worry that if they alienate Mr. Erdogan, he may move even closer to Russia, as he hinted this week by confining an order to buy Russian S-400 anti-aircraft missiles.
Really good. Very good. You want to do the next paragraph? Yes. It's a lucky day.
But now the Western governments have mostly let pass Mr. Erdogan's claims that he is simply pursuing because involvement in the coup. Arrest of Amnesty International staff make it hard for them to keep ignoring the situation. The use of criminal proceedings against human rights defenders is unfortunately an increasingly phenomenon in Turkey, says Nils.
Whatever, yeah. Another horrible name.
The Council of Europe's Commissioner for Human Rights, Mr. notes that Turkey was one of the first signatories of the European Convention on Human Rights, which it has
Abrogated
during the state of emergency that has been in place since the coup.
Good, right. In red, do you want to do the next paragraph?
Yeah. The armies have prodded Europe and America to take some hesitant action. Matthias Zimmer, the salesman of the German Bundestag, Committee of Human Rights, met Turkey's ambassador to demand that Mr. Iser and Mr. Kilik be released. There has also been some quiet effort at higher levels of the German government to appeal to Mr. Erdogan that relations between the two countries are at a low ebb. In April, after Germany blocked Turkey's politicians from
what?
blocked
Just after blocked? What's the word? What's this word?
Turkish politicians. Sorry.
Good.
From addressing Turkish German in support of Mr. Erdogan campaign for more power. He accused the country of Nazi practice.
Nazi practices, perhaps, yeah.
It is unlikely that Germany retains much influence over him.
Okay. For its part?
For its part, America's State Department issued a statement expressing deep concern over the arrests. But Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, made no public comments about the detained activists during his visit to Istanbul on July 9th and 10th.
July 9th to 10th?
9th to 10th.
Good.
Sally Shelty, the Secretary General of Amnesty International, traveled to Hamburg last week to urge leaders at the G20 meeting to press Mr. Erdogan, but said nothing in public. The situation is now being ignored, says Mr. Ellison, but concern articulated behind closed doors need to be aired.
Very good, very good. So, these are the 10 synonyms. You need to find a synonym for to weaken, to make concessions, to participate, to take part, to increase, to lengthen, etc., etc., etc. To increase, to lengthen, to decrease, to become smaller, to publish, to publicly comment, to accept, to avoid commenting on, to provoke, to push someone to act, limited, difficult, complicated, to put pressure.
With the text or without?
I'm going to put the text back up for you, otherwise it would be a little difficult. Yeah?
There's an acronym in the article. What is NATO?
NATO?
Yeah.
Northern Allied Treaties
Okay.
Organization.
Okay.
L'OTAN.
Yeah.
In English we have NATO and CETO. Northern Allied Treaties Organization, a Southeastern Treaties Organization for Asia Pacific. Okay, everybody got them? It's good? Yeah? So the first ones should be in the first part. When you found all the ones, the first 5 perhaps that correspond to the first part, I'll put the second page up. C'est dans l'ordre. Okay. Easy, difficult? Seems to be doing okay. You got them? You got the first 5 anyhow?
5.
5? 6.
1, 2, 3.
I said that off the top of my head because I guess it's 5 paragraphs. Maybe the 5th one is on the next page. I don't know. So you got at least 4? What I'll do is I go on to the next page and you can look at the second half of the synonyms and I come back to this page. Do you want me to go the first part of the page again? You okay? Does everybody have about half?
No.
How many?
4.
4? How many? 9. Great. About half? No? You lost? Okay. Okay. Let's do this then. So any ideas? To weaken, to make concessions. Any ideas? To soften? To soften? Softening? To soften, perhaps? To participate, to take part? Je vais les afficher. Yeah? To attend, excellent. To increase, to lengthen. To extend, you had it, really good, to extend. To discover, to bring to the surface. No ideas? No ideas? To decrease, to become smaller? To shrink? Good. To publish, to publicly comment? To accept, to avoid commenting on? To provoke, to push someone to act? Pride. Limited, difficult, complicated? Nobody?
at a low hat.
To put pressure on?
To retain influence on the body.
So if I give you the words now, so to prod would go with which one? Huh? So you think it goes with number 8? Interesting. Okay. To root out would go with number
4.
To discover, to bring to surface. Interesting. Perhaps. We'll see. All right. To issue.
To publish.
To publish. To soften. To weaken. To press.
Pressure on social.
Okay. To extend.
To increase, to lengthen.
To lengthen. At a low ebb.
It's limited difficulty.
To shrink.
To decrease.
To decrease. To let pass.
To accept, to avoid connecting.
Okay, and to attend then. So, let's have a look what we got.
So, to retain influence over somebody, is it to put pressure on them? Because I think it was in the article.
If you retain pressure over somebody, you have leverage. So you're close, but would you say having leverage on someone is the same thing as putting pressure on them? Because the leverage, you can use it or not.
Yeah. All right.
But it's good. It's good. It's good for you thinking. Good. Okay? Yeah? Okay, to address an issue, we need to address this issue, we need to talk about this issue, we need to make a decision about this issue, we need to address... Huh? Your question is, in fact, can the word issue have more than one meaning? Is that the question? No. No. When you say, what is at issue here? What's the subject? It's not necessarily a problem. Frequently in French we think that an issue is always a problem. But what is that issue here? What are we talking about? What are we dealing with? Okay? It's quite likely that it's a problem, but it's not mandatory. It's not contained in the sense of the word. Okay? I don't take issue with that. I don't take issue with what you're saying. I don't have a problem with what you're saying. Okay, that would be a problem. When you issue a publication, émettre, it's not at all the same meaning. Issue of Time magazine. Huh? Yeah. Okay, did I answer your question? All right. Okay, no problem. So, it was a sort of intervention on behalf of. What's another way of saying on behalf of? Yeah, or for. right? To carry out. When you carry out something, what's another way of saying to carry out? To do. To accomplish, to do, to perform. Okay? When you read out something, do you read it to yourself or do you read it publicly? Okay? So in fact, the full expression is to read out aloud. Lire à voix haute. To read out aloud. Okay? Interesting, you know what a jail is. You put someone in jail. But as you know, one of the problems in English is you can take any noun, pretty much any noun, and transform it into a verb. A jail, to jail. Okay? To term someone a prisoner of conscience. What's another word for to term? To call. Demand. What does demand mean in English? If I said that I love her dearly, but my wife is very demanding. Hein? Exiger. Exigeant. C'est pas seulement demander. C'est un peu plus. Okay? Let's be careful. Clearly, what does a president do? She or he presides. Increasingly, what could I replace increasingly by? What could we say instead of increasingly?
Growth.
Growth?
Yes.
Growth what?
Plutôt en français.
Yeah.
Une croissance, la croissance.
Growth.
Une augmentation en fait du pouvoir.
Il écrit le gouvernement over in increasingly authoritarian regime.
L'augmentation.
More and more. Yeah? More and more. More and more. Staff, as you know, in English means everybody that works in a company. Management, everybody that works in a company. Staff. Okay? To soften, I'm sure that you're all very modern men and that every morning you put cream on your faces to have soft skin, right? Why not? Okay? So when you soften something, you make it softer, don't you? You put a softener on it. Make it softer. To purge, no problem? Yeah, completely clean, to completely get rid of. Nevertheless? Huh? Néanmoins, another word in English? However. Target. So you have a target, c'est une cible. You have the verb to target, cibler. You can replace to target by to aim at something, A-E-M, to aim at something, to target something. Okay? To attend. So when you go to a meeting, when you go to a class, what do? You attend the meeting, you attend the class, so you are the attendees. The attendees. Les participants. So let's look at the first paragraph. What's happening in the first paragraph? So clearly, Amnesty International have decided that they needed to defend Mr. Erdogan back in 1998, who was at that point the mayor and had been arrested because he read out aloud, he read out publicly a poem, and the poem had some religious content which was not acceptable at the time in Turkey. So Mr. Erdogan was defended back then in 1998 by Amnesty International, and they obtained his release. We are now 19 years later, and it's not Mr. Erdogan who is in prison, it's Mr. Erdogan who is putting people in prison, and it's Amnesty International that is now not writing to anybody else, but writing directly to him, asking him to release people. Unfortunately, he doesn't seem to be listening to anybody. He's staying very hard. He's not changing his position. So since the coup, 50,000 people have been put in prison. But what is shocking for human rights advocates is now that it's their colleagues who are being put in prison. It's no longer just Turkish people. Okay? Former. What's the country of former? Huh? The former and the present? Yeah, maybe. Could work. It's interesting. Could work.
And the latter?
Yeah, the former and the latter. Normally, if you're looking for the antonym, from a language point of view. I understand what you're saying. It's the last person, that's the person now has a job, right? Former and the present. But normally we talk about former and latter. Elle a été ouverte. Okay? The former and the latter. When you call for activists to be freed, normally it's something you're going to be doing publicly, isn't it? When you extend, you increase the period of time, you make it longer. When you fail, it's the opposite of to succeed, to fail, a success, a failure. Okay? A crackdown is when you're very hard and it's like the sound of a whip, a crackdown. To root out. You know that English people love gardening. We have this reputation, we're crazy about gardening. So we have lots of expressions in English about gardening and boats. So you have a plant. You can look at the plant in the ground. And what goes into the ground and then grows under the ground is the roots. The part that comes out of the ground is the stem. So we say, where does the problem stem from? What is the root of the problem? L'origine, la racine. Okay? The problem stems from. Le problème trouve son origine dans. Yeah?
Can you repeat what means crackdown?
You know what a whip is? A whip? What's the film with the guy with the hat and the whip and Indiana Jones? You know, Indiana Jones has got a whip, right? And what noise does the whip make? Huh? What? Everybody has their references, right? You hear the noise, right? The crack. And when you crack the whip, what do people do? So a crackdown is when you force people to behave as you want them to behave, or you limit people's movements, or you control them. Okay? You get it?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about 50 Shades of Grey, I've never seen it. To root out, crack down, to turn out. So thousands of people turned out. When you turn out, you go out of your house, you go out of your flat, and you go into the street. You turn out. Sont allés dans la rue. To turn out. And after every demonstration, the CGT says, 500,000 people turned out to demonstrate. The police says, no, 60,000 people turned out to demonstrate. Right? You turn out to demonstrate. To rally is to unite, to come together, to assemble, to group. Assembler.
Turn out to rally means that to go in a demonstration.
Sont descendus dans le rue pour manifester.
And rally means
Manifester, se réunir, se rassembler. Unless you're wearing a blue velvet dress and you've got your high shoes on, your tiara, and you go to the rally.
Yes.
Okay? But even if you do that and you're at the rally, and I'm sure you've been to hundreds of rallies, the idea is to get together. It's the same thing, right? Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
But at the same time
Yeah.
of people.
But you kind of have to, unless you've got a very big house, you have to go somewhere. Okay? It's room to operate is shrinking. It's an expression we use a lot in English. Room to move, room to operate, leeway, marge de manœuvre. Ça peut être intéressant comme expression dans un essai. It's room to operate, it's room to move, it's room to negotiate. C'est sa marge. It's room. It's shrinking, est en train de rétrécir. Yeah. Shrink. You just have to think of a cashmere sweater. I know you all have cashmere sweaters, and I know you've all washed them in the washing machine. And unfortunately, it shrunk. So far. What's another way of saying so far?
As things stand.
Ah, interesting. How about up to now? Up to now. To issue. Clearly, issue here, c'est on émis. Okay? Human rights violation documentale, there was a strong interest in maintaining. And then it's interesting, in English, you strike a deal. You strike a deal. We met the customers and it was great. On Friday afternoon, we struck a deal. On a conclu un accord. To strike, S-T-R-I-K-E, a deal. Even if the word deal, I agree, is complicated, because deal, in the beginning, is a card dealer. If you go to Las Vegas, you've got a card dealer, right? What does a card dealer do? He distributes the cards. If you want to buy a car, you go to not a card dealer, but a car dealer. And what does he do? He distributes the cars. So deal initially is the idea of distribution. Okay? But clearly it's come over time, a deal to be understood as either a contract or it can also be a bonne affaire. It's a deal. Okay? To rely on, another way of saying to rely on?
To depend on someone.
It's not bad, you can depend on someone. I would maybe prefer to count on. Maybe. Because when the idea of dependence is maybe more complicated than that. Yeah? But you're right, it's just, I'm a little hesitant about the word dependence. Okay, so to rely on, we say that German cars are reliable. R-E-L-I-A-B-L-E. Fiable. Okay? He's a reliable guy. She's a reliable girl. On peut compter sur. Okay? To count on somebody. Okay? To hint. What's it mean to hint? if you hint that you're going to do something, do you say clearly, or do you kind of give the impression that maybe you're going to do it?
It's like a premonition.
How is it like a premonition?
Like he says that's gonna happen, but he's not sure. But when when that's happened, that maybe.
Recently in Spain, things have been a bit complicated.
Yes.
And the president of Catalonia has hinted at the idea that he would declare independence. He hasn't actually done it. Il a donné l'impression, il a donné des indices comme quoi, when you hint at something, tu donnes des indices, tu donnes l'impression que ça peut arriver. A hint. In cooking, you can talk about a hint of something, un soupçon de quelque chose. Tu vois, cette notion de quelque chose, c'est pas vraiment tangible. Okay. When you let something pass, you don't react. You're in a group and someone is being obnoxious, and your friend says, just let it pass. Don't react. Just let it pass. Okay? To abrogate is exactly the same as in French, abroger. So I think it should be easy for you. The rest have prodded Europe and America. To prod. Do you remember? I think we talked about a cattle prod last time. No? Did we see this article last time? No?
No.
Okay. Have any of you guys been on a farm?
Yes.
With cows? No? No cows? There were no cows. I'm sorry. Well, when you go on a farm and there are cows, and someone says, do you want to help me? Because I've got to take the cows from here to there. Okay? They normally have this kind of black stick with an electrical current, and they go, and the cow goes, woo, and it moves forward. And all the cows start moving forward. It's great. It's called a cattle prod. It's called a cattle prod. So when you prod someone to do something, you say, come on, get moving, do it. And you prod them. Tu les pousses, tu les encourages fortement. Allez. Non, tu les forces pas, tu les... Allez hop. Tu prod, encourager fortement. Yeah. Le verbe effectivement c'est P-R-O-D à l'infinitif. Okay, so to prod. At a low ebb. What's an ebb? What is the ebb and the tide? Anybody from Brittany here? Brittany? Nobody from Brittany. Amazing. I'm in a room with nobody from Brittany. I never thought it would happen. Well, anybody here from the coast? Who came from the coast? Where?
Biarritz.
Biarritz, okay. Especially in Biarritz. Well, not the beach at Biarritz because you've got lots of stones. It's very protected. But if you go up the coast just a little bit, going towards Osegor or something like that, you have the problem of when you go on the beach, you have to know what the tides are.
Yeah.
And if you're caught in the cliffs on a little creek or something and it's high tide, you've got a problem. The tide goes out and the tide comes in. High tide, low tide. High ebb, low ebb. Yeah. So clearly, if your relations are at a low ebb, la mer est loin, ça va pas loin, ça va pas aller. Quoi. Point bas, point mort. Okay. To urge is like to prod. You can prod and you can urge. And you can press. You can prod, you can urge, you can be pressed. And when you air your ideas, you say them. They go into the air. People can hear them. And when you go to a television studio, or when you watch Taratata, it says on air. That means the show is being broadcast. Live, on air. C'est sur les ondes. Okay? So, we saw all that. So, this is very quickly just a way that you can record vocabulary. I show it every time and people never do it, but it will help. So, you take the word that you've discovered that you didn't know before. For example, to soften. You note what part of speech it is. It's a verb, isn't it? Okay? You do +1, so if it's a verb, what's the adverb? Softly. What would be a synonym? This is not right. A synonym to soften would be what? Could be to make concessions, or okay, not bad. And the antonym clearly is right, it's to harden. Okay? The government has softened its position on foreign trade. So if you do this, you find a synonym, you find an antonym, and you do a +1, and you do a sample sentence, you will remember the word afterwards, which is the problem, to remember. To attend, verb, noun, attendee. To participate, to be absent. She attended the meeting in Spain last week. To extend, verb, an extension is a noun. To prolong, to shorten. I asked if I could extend my visa for a few more days. To root out, it's a phrasal verb, so it's going to be difficult to replace it. To get rid of, to set up. The system is working perfectly now. We seem to have rooted out all the problems. To shrink, verb, a shrinking world, adjective. To make smaller, to enlarge. Unfortunately, my sweater has shrunk in the wash. You get the idea? It takes a little bit of time, but the problem with vocabulary is it's more difficult than grammar because you can't control the quantity. And there's lots of vocabulary, 750,000 words in English or something completely ridiculous like that. So there's tons of vocabulary. So you have to have some system of helping your mind knowing where to put it, where to catalog the information. And manipulating it a little bit in terms of neuro-linguistic programming. You need to manipulate a word 7 times. You have 7 filters that stop you using a word. So these were the words we saw. On behalf of, we said we could replace it with for, to carry out, to do, a mare. That's something that you guys gave us when you came over in 1066, the Battle of Hastings. William the Conqueror came over. He wasn't very nice to our nice king who was called Harold. And then you started organizing England with mares and all kinds of stuff. We didn't know how to spell the word, so we spelt it like that. But the pronunciation is exactly the same as in French. Mare. To jail someone, as I said, jail can be both a noun and a verb. To read out aloud, so you read it so other people can hear. To term someone, you can also talk about a term in office, your second term in office, mandat. To demand something, a demand, is l'idée de exiger. What does the president do? She presides. Increasingly, to increase, more and more. Staff, but also the verb to staff a company. To soften, to abate. A coup, to oust, to purge, a purge, nevertheless, yet, however. To target, a target, former, latter. To call for something, to extend, an extension, to fail, a failure. A crackdown, to crack down on. To root out someone, to root out something. to turn out, but we can also talk about a good turnout, a bad turnout, nombre de personnes qui ont participé. It's room to operate, it's room to move, it's room to negotiate, to shrink, to make smaller, so far up to now, to issue, to publish, to strike a deal, to conclude a deal, to rely on, to count on, to hint a hint, to order someone or something, to let pass, to abrogate, to revoke, to prod, to nudge, to urge, to press, at a low ebb, at a low point, to urge, to prod, to encourage, to press, to push, to air an opinion, to speak out. Ok? Je vous donne avec tout ça. So, Trump. What do you think this is going to be about?
Mistakes of Donald Trump.
About what?
The mistakes of Donald Trump.
Quoi?
Mistakes.
The mistakes. Les erreurs. Yes.
The fact that the FBI is looking into him because of accusations of maybe he leaked information to Russia. And that's why the FBI is looking into him.
During the presidential election? That the presidential election was manipulated to some extent? Okay, and that recently, like Harvey Weinstein, he's had a few people have come forward and said that maybe his behavior was less than perfect in certain circumstances.
Borderline tweets.
He's borderline tweets. Good, he's borderline tweets. But the question is, do you think a president can pardon himself? Do you think anybody can pardon themselves?
Well, in fact, it's talking about the ability for a president to use the power to pardon somebody
Mm-hmm.
who has been condemned
Mm-hmm.
because of crimes he has committed.
Yeah, good.
So the journalist is wondering if Donald Trump is condemned by justice court, can he cancel the judgment?
Uh-huh. Good.
So it's more like
So you all know that in the United States, if someone is on death row, dans le couloir de la mort, on death row, waiting to die, the president can issue a pardon. Okay? So clearly, the president has the ability to pardon anybody for anything. Okay? But the problem is, can he apply that ability to pardon to himself?
However, there is a special law about the impeachment.
That's 100% the question. If someone wants to impeach the president, if the Congress wants to impeach the president, so the House of Reps and the Senators come together and they form Congress and they want to impeach the president, can the president say, fine, impeach me, but I'm going to pardon myself? Huh?
That wouldn't be very democratic.
I agree entirely with you, that would not be democratic.
all the rights, like rights of God, that he can't, if he kills someone in the street, he's going to jail, even if it's the president.
What was Bush Jr.'s vice president called?
Bush Jr. was
No, that was...
In democracy, not in...
he shot someone, didn't he? Gosh, what was his name?
Junior, the son.
Yeah, Junior, yeah. He shot somebody while he was vice president. It was a hunting accident. He said the person was old and shouldn't have been there. And that was the end of the story.
Yeah.
To my mind, it's impossible that the president pardon himself. It's struggling Montesquieu about separation of powers, and if the executive power is changing the legitimation of the low power.
But justice doesn't exist for presidents. While you're in power,
In America, is a justice exists, is the Supreme Court. I know of Supreme Court.
the only thing you can do to a president is impeach him.
it's-
You have to impeach him first.
Yes.
While he's president, you can do nothing.
When he's president, you could.
While he's president, you can do nothing. Before you can judge him, you have to impeach him.
But there is the big power to impeach. I mean, if Donald Trump is condemned to, I don't know, to prison, well,
He can't be condemned. He's president.
He can be.
He can't be judged.
No, can he?
How can you judge him? He's president.
Yes, but
Who can judge him? The only thing you can do is impeach him. Then you can judge him.
yes, but it's like a justice. It's like if he's doing a lot of things, bad things.
The only people that can impeach him is not the Supreme Court, it's Congress,
Yes.
House of Representatives and the Senate. So it's completely, there is no, the legal system has no power, no take on the president for me.
But he can be called to the floor by a judiciary committee, right? I think that's what happened in House of Cards.
Yes, but he would have to be impeached first. There could be some kind of...
It's just a testimony that they're looking for. I mean, there is judiciary control.
There is judicial control, of course, on his actions.
But
On his actions.
Yeah, sure.
But we're talking about the person.
if he,
If I may, I don't really see the difference between the impeachment, which is the power to dismiss the president.
Yes, then the person is no longer president.
Yeah. To my mind, that's a big power. So we don't need to.
You look how difficult it is in reality to impeach somebody.
Yeah, sure. It's political. It's a political decision.
I mean, the Republicans really wanted to impeach Clinton.
But they would.
They
there are
couldn't.
not enough.
But it wasn't this. Was it because he had an affair with Monica Lewinsky? Yeah. But it was more a political decision. In Mr. Trump's case, it's different. It's the interference of a foreign nation in an election. I mean, the fact that Bill Clinton had an affair with Monica Lewinsky has nothing to do with democracy or the way Bill Clinton ran the country for 8 years. So it's different situations. So you don't see my point, right?
I'm not particularly comfortable with the idea that a president will obtain sexual favors from a young person doing a training course in the White House. I don't think it's great. Whether it's worth impeaching the person or not, I don't know, but I think it's not the right behavior.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's really not acceptable behavior. The problem is that he lied about it.
Oh.
He went on television and lied. He said there was no sexual wrongdoing. So he lied to people. And I think the impeachment process was based on the lie.
On the perjury, right?
And just if the president is judged like everyone for example,
Driving the car too
Yes.
quickly? Drinking?
Is going to go to prison every day. So there is always another president, so I think it's complicated because there is no
I think a woman or a man who's president has to make decisions that we can't even imagine.
and has to make decisions that can impact people's lives. I mean, in terms of whether they live well or badly, but also in terms of whether they live or die. So clearly, you have to be able to take those decisions without worrying about whether the next day you're going to be put in jail. I think you can't function otherwise, and democracy can't function. So the presidential function has to be protected. What's your view?
Well, the fact that, I mean, here a person is the president, the head of state, or whatever, but it doesn't prevent them from respecting the law. I mean, all decisions which are not in the presidential framework have to be judged.
Do you think being a president is like a job that you do just a few hours a day and then you go home?
No, it's not a normal job, but
it's 24 hours a day, right?
Yes, 24 hours a day. But
7
for
days a week.
instance, former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, he was involved in prostitution, traffic. So to my mind, he had to be judged, but he didn't.
He was judged.
Yeah, because he was Prime Minister. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it was the president...
It's a republic, isn't it, in Italy?
Yeah, but there is a president.
Yes, but it's a figurehead.
Yeah. Yeah, but
not operational.
For instance, if it was the president wouldn't have been judged.
I think that whether you're prime minister or president, it's the same thing.
Oh.
It depends whether there's. I think the prime minister of France, the same thing, is protected to a certain extent. Maybe not to the same extent as the president. But in England, it'll be about the president, and prime minister about the queen. So I think it's the same thing for the prime minister in England. It's just a job title, isn't it?
Okay, interesting. Right. So, you want to read the first paragraph for us?
MIXPD messages.
Oh, what's that? Very interesting.
Mixed messages
Yeah.
are hallmark of the Donald Trump presidency. So it is no surprise that in the wake of the Washington Post story on July 20th, implicitly Mr. Trump as curious about the extent of his foreign power. Contradictory spins emerged from different corners of the White House. Jay Sekulow, Mr. Trump's lawyer, flatly denied the report that under investigation for suspicious ties to Russia, the president is looking into ways to shield his aides and himself. We have not, and I continue to not have, conversation with the President of the United States about Paris. Mr. Sekulow said on July 23rd.
Good.
But a day
Earlier,
the President tweeted his belief that all agree the US President has the complete power to pardon.
so what do you think would be the hallmark? What is the hallmark? Not bad, not bad. Yes, like the fabric. Donc le message confus on the market fabric. So it's no surprise that in the wake of, does anybody know what that means? In the wake of? Huh? Yeah. Has anybody here ever been water skiing?
Yes.
And you know you can do wakeboard, can't you, behind the boat? Yeah, so you have the boat. You have the boat that moves forward like this. You're behind on your water skis. And if you look at the water, it does this shape. And this, you're in this shape. And you stay in the wake. And then you jump a little bit over the wave and you go out of the wake. This is the wake. C'est l'eau qui traîne derrière, qui laisse le traîner qui laisse pas le bateau. So in the wake of something, it's following on from something. Extent we already saw, so that's the limit. Contradictory spins. So a spin, this is an important word to know for those of you that want to go into politics. Because when you become famous, you will need a spin doctor. And that all famous political people have spin doctors. And the job of the spin doctor is to tell you how to say things so that it sounds positive. Yes, 600,000 people have lost jobs this month, but whatever. You find some way of making it sound positive. It's a spin doctor. And if you play tennis, when you hit the ball, if you hit it like that, you put topspin on the ball. And if you cut the ball, you put backspin on the ball. So you see the idea is putting a spin on the message. You put a positive spin on the message. And so a spin doctor works in a communication company, and it's a communications expert, and we call them a spin doctor. Okay? So you put a positive or a negative spin on a message. So, flatly, another word would be categorically. To categorically deny. The president is looking into, is investigating. To shield. What's it mean to shield? Protect. So when you were a Roman, you had your shield and your sword, yeah? And so if you shield people, you protect them. Okay? So clearly, Mr. Trump thinks the US president has the complete power to pardon. Have you read already? No.
No. Mr. Trump, no authority on the Constitution, may have come to that conclusion all on his own if he or his team had looked into the range of expert views on the subject. A more nuanced take would have emerged. Article 2, Section 2 of America's Constitution says presidents shall have power to grant reprieve and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. This rather straightforward provision has one express limitation. The president can't stop the House of Representatives from impeaching him, and in specifying that the power applies for offenses against the United States. It means that presidents cannot issue pardons for violations of state law, but could an embattled president pardon himself if he is prosecuted for federal crimes?
Okay, this is interesting. So the power applies for offenses against the United States. It means the president cannot issue pardons for violations of state law, but yes for federal law. Can anybody explain that to me, the difference between state and federal law? And
In the United States, every state has specific laws that are applied inside the state, and federal laws are laws that are applying on the whole country.
okay. So the president here can be taken to court for what? For federal laws, offenses, or state offenses?
Where is it in the text?
A president can't stop the House of Representatives from impeaching him, and in specifying the power applies for offences against the United States. It means that presidents cannot issue pardons for violations of state law. But could an embattled president pardon himself if he's prosecuted for a federal crime? It's crazy.
Embezzle, it means gracier.
Yeah.
No, means gracier.
Yeah. What do you think it meant?
I don't know.
Dis que je suis désolé?
Non, je pense qu'après, je ne sais
Pardonner quelqu'un?
pas.
Embattled.
Ah, embattled. Empêtré. So the range of, what is the range of? A range of products, a product range. Yeah, and gamme. Interesting. Another word that you left when you came over and you spent some time with us. Clearly you were very nuanced. To nuance. Okay. To grant, to accord, to give. Straightforward. Direct, simple. Express, listed, named. Embattled. Having a problem in a difficult situation. Okay, who's going to do historical president?
Historical president says no. Richard Nixon looked into the finding, and his own lawyers gave him the green light, but Mr. Nixon didn't pursue self-power after a lawyer in the Office of Legal Counsel advised against it. Barry Lawton, the acting Assistant Attorney General, didn't advocate in her 1974 memo. Under the fundamental rule that no one may be a judge in his own case, the president cannot pardon himself. Where does this rule come from? It's a precept of natural law, a theory of universal legal principles that Neil Gorsuch, Mr. Trump speak for the Supreme Court generally finds persuasive. Sir Edward Koch, an English jurist, introduced the idea in Latin, nemo iudex in causa sua.
Very good.
In the early
1600s.
1600s. And John Locke, the political philosopher whose ideas inspired American founders, developed it in 1689. It's unreasonable for men to be judges in their own cases. Locke wrote, because self-love will bias men in favor of themselves and their friends. The result is confusion and disorder. If one man is free to be the judge in his own case, everyone has to put up with whatever it goes, whether he is led by reason, mistake, or maybe.
Good, very good. Very good, very good. So, if I give you the green light, I'm telling you can do something or you can't do something. You can do something. We got the green light, we can start the project. Okay? So, you know when you're in your car, I'm sure you all have wonderful sports cars, and you're sitting there, you've got the traffic lights, you've got the green light, the orange light, and the red light. The green light means you can go, right? Okay? So Mr. Nixon decided that it was best not to try to pardon himself, even though apparently his lawyer said constitutionally the president can. Okay? So Mary Lawton, though, the acting Assistant Attorney General, did not equivocate. What does it mean to equivocate? If she did not equivocate, was she very clear or was she a little ambiguous? Very good. Okay. What is a bias in English? What does it mean to be biased?
Influenced.
Not bad. Influenced. Yeah, I have 3 daughters. And I think they're beautiful, but I'm biased.
Subjective or the meaning
I have a preconceived idea. I'm no longer objective, right? You have a preconceived idea. You're no longer objective. I'm biased. So when you have a bias, it means that you can't see things really objectively anymore. You have a certain orientation in the way you're going to think. To put up with. What does it mean to put up with somebody? Yeah. Do you have a girlfriend? Who said supporter? Does your boyfriend put up with you? Okay. C'est supporter. To put up with somebody. Okay, to put up with yourself. Yeah? All right. So what is the idea here? What is the idea? What is this idea of the precept of natural law? The precept of natural law. What seems to be the idea here? What would natural law be compared to man-made law? Man-made law or women-made law is the law that we vote, isn't it? We have a situation and we say, ooh, difficult situation, we need a law. Let's write a law. You write the law and then you control the situation, right? It's man-made. But there is something above that, which is something that exists around the world, and it's the idea of natural law. What do you think it would be? Hmm?
It will be freedom.
It's common sense. It's common sense. Natural law is common sense. It is best not to kill people. It's natural law. You don't need a law to say that. Okay? There are lots of things where it's best that you cannot judge yourself. It's common sense. So it's the precept of natural law. So all decisions in law have to refer at one point to what is the common sense. And it's the precept of natural law. So the precept of natural law is you can't be judge and party. You can't be judge and party. You cannot judge yourself. Can you go to the bathroom? Can I open the door? You want to know where the bathroom is?
No, I know.
Okay. So it's what your initial reaction was about imparting himself. Your natural reaction is, hey, this is not natural. It's not natural law. Natural law would tell us that this is ridiculous, right? Okay? The precept of natural law. So, do you want to read for us? You. Yes, you. Read.
For Lawrence Tripp, a professor at Harvard Law School, and Richard Painter and Norm Eisen, ethics scholars. Zars. For George Bush and Barack Obama, the impeachment exception in the Constitution will make no sense if the president could pardon himself. If a president is impeached by the House and removed from office after a trial in the Senate, he remains fully subject to criminal prosecution, according to Article 1, Section 4. Allowing presidents to pardon themselves would render this check on executive power meaningless. And the founders seemed keen to keep even the president's right hand man away from the process. The Chief Justice, not the Vice President, is to preside when the Senate conducts an impeachment trial of the President. Mr. Eisen, Painter, and Tribe observe.
Good. So what do you think a tsar is? A tsar.
The emperor of Russia.
It's Russians here again in America? Of course, a tsar, yes, but here, what's it mean?
A population?
References, like
Huh?
references, like people they look at.
So like a recognized expert?
Right.
Eminence. Yeah. So an ethics czar is la personne qui est censée mieux connaître le sujet. The top. The best expert, if you like. The czar. The king. The champion. The number one. So, in other words, Tribe, Painter, and Ellison advised Bush and Obama about ethics issues. And they are considered to be, as you said, the reference, the ethics czars. There is nobody who's supposed to know more than they do. Okay? A trial, you know what a trial is? A hearing, a trial, to be tried, to be taken to court. Okay? Meaningless, with no sense. Keen, seem to be keen. What does it mean if you're keen on doing something?
You like to do something.
You like? Or you're passionate even? It's something you like a lot? I'm very keen on horse riding. To be fond, to be keen. A right-hand man or a right-hand woman. C'est la personne sur laquelle on... Okay. The lady wearing the marine thing. You know what I mean?
I've heard an account of credentials that were utilizing today. A professor at Yale at George Washington University find no Senate in the Constitution that was used. In the 1974 case, due to a note, the Supreme Court declared that the coordinating power, the enumerated power of the Constitution, with limitation if any, must be found in the Constitution itself. So the High Court has never been whether presidents, controllers themselves, such as Christie, which usually gets on the way to Mr. Friends or his professor,
Good. Right. So, although no fan of presidential self-padding, John F. President Lord George Washington University finds nothing constitutional that bars it. To bar something, if you're barred from doing something, are you allowed to do it or is it prohibited? Prohibited. Forbidden. The pardoning power is an enumerated power. Huh?
Unlimited? No.
It's a named, listed power. It's named. It's written. The High Court has never weighed in. What's it mean when you weigh in a situation? To weigh in.
Pencher vers, pencher vers une opinion.
C'est influencer. Tu apportes ton poids. Yeah, okay. To opt to do something? To choose? Great. To opt, to choose, to outline, not to be confused with to underline. To outline. No? When you outline something, you describe it, normally not in detail. Les grandes lignes to outline. Okay, when you write an outline, it's the major ideas normally. To step aside, if you're in office, you step aside, you leave office. To step aside. Tack. Tack is if you sail boats and you're going into the wind, here's the wind pushing against the front of your boat, you have to tack to be able to move forward. To tack and to jib. So this is, as I said, we like gardening and sailing in England. To tack, another word would be tactic, strategy. Would be legally sound, would be legally solid, would be legally based. But it would demand a dose of chutzpah. Even Mr. Trump may lack. So I would be delighted if anybody can tell me what chutzpah is. Huh? Culot, pas mal. Guts. Tripe. Okay? Right, so the debate of the legitimacy of presidential self-pardons may seem at once extraordinary in academics, since long-standing custom has it that presidents cannot be indicted while in office. Whether or not this norm is ripe for rethinking, as some scholars urge, Mr. Trump's interest in the pardon power may be a sign that the president's frequent denials of wrongdoing falls into the category of protesting too much. As the Supreme Court wrote in the 1915 ruling, issuing a pardon carries an imputation of guilt, and accepting one constitutes a confession. Long-standing. What is a long-standing custom? It's a custom that has existed for a long time, right? Established, long, huh? Deeply rooted. It's not bad. It's not bad. Not bad. Long-standing. To be indicted. If you're indicted. Mise en accusation. Is it better to eat fruit that is ripe or not? When you eat fruit, you want to know if the fruit is ripe, don't you? If it's not ripe, it's rather hard. Mûr. So we talk about something being mûr pour un changement, ready. You mean like ripe for change, perhaps? Mûr, prêt à être changé? Ou you mean that ils n'ont pas pris une douche depuis quelques semaines? No, you wouldn't say that. C'est l'idée d'arriver à un état de maturation qui fait en sorte que c'est bon à être consommé ou bon à être changé. Donc c'est normalement appliqué à des fruits. But you could talk about a decision. Ça veut dire que la société va mûrir quelque chose. Yeah, the project's right. Yeah, good. Wrongdoing. Tough. Yeah? No problem? So, these are the cinnamon. Any idea about following after, based on what we've seen? Any ideas? To protect? To shield. Wow. Direct, simple. You guys are good. Wow. The go-ahead, permission to act. Fantastic. A preconceived idea. Bias. Experts, leading advisors. It's the Russian guys. Zaz, good. To put pressure, to use influence. Good. Describe, detailed. Good. Strategy, game plan. The boat. Attack. Ready, mature. Wow. What a group. You guys are the A team, aren't you? Huh? Ça va mieux, non? Good. All right. Not so bad. Not so bad. Right. These would be the questions that you would have. So, what would be the precept of natural law? That's an example. That's an example. What is the concept? Ah, that's better. It's common sense. So the precept of natural law is that there are commonly accepted ideas about situations, and that for us it seems natural that you do or do not do something in a certain situation.
It's not necessarily true because it depends on the society's
How many societies do you know where it's acceptable to kill?
Well, there are certain, for example, Chechnya, where the children is acceptable.
Yeah, but you're looking for exceptions to justify a rule. No? I think I think that it's common. In Berlin, it's fine.
In certain parts of Africa, it's no longer
In Berlin, it's fine as well. In Vincennes, where I live, it's okay. It's crazy. You can't go running in the woods anymore. There are naked people all over the place. It's completely nuts. It's completely crazy. I mean, why not? But, it's crazy. I think the precept of natural law is commonly accepted. The word commonly means that the majority of people would accept it, doesn't it? And I think it's commonly accepted, the idea that it's not a good idea to start killing people. It's commonly accepted. You will find exceptions, but exceptions never justify the rule.
It's not killing, it's doing something that would hurt someone. And maybe in certain societies, if you kill for a specific reason, it's okay.
You could stay on the idea if you want, but you're still looking for an exception to justify a rule. L'exception ne fait pas la règle. Commonly accepted. If it's commonly, ça veut dire que la majorité estime que c'est... Hein? Precept of natural law is there that it's commonly accepted. C'est le concept même. Qu'est-ce que tu veux dire, quoi? À part faire le vieux ou pas?
Pour moi, il n'est pas... On peut très bien utiliser cette nourriture. Peut-être que c'est vraiment de très connu, très vague pour reconstituer une loi de vie. Ça ne peut pas se faire de la nation, ça ne peut pas faire de la religion.
It's a commonly accepted principle. That means the majority of people think it's a good idea. That means when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with a bunch of tablets, that most people think that probably what was written on those commandments, which is kind of the precept of natural law, is probably a good idea. It doesn't mean that everybody in the world will do it, but that it's commonly accepted. Commonly just means the majority of people think that it's probably better to do that way.
And you can't argue against that because you're just giving exceptions, and exceptions don't justify the rule. And if you start giving exceptions to justify the rule in an essay, any jury will say you're wrong. Because you're giving an exception to justify a rule. An exception does not create a rule. It's an exception. A rule is the commonly accepted notion, right? Non?
What is common?
Oh, allez, on va pas couper les cheveux en deux pour rien. C'est stupide ça. Ça fait du temps. Yeah, did you want to say something? C'est ridicule ça. C'est ridicule. Tu cherches des trucs. It's commonly accepted. When it's commonly accepted, it's the majority. Point à quoi. So, why does Lawrence Tribe feel that the impeachment exception in the Constitution would make no sense if the president could pardon himself? Why?
If the president can pardon himself, he can be impeached because the reason he's being impeached would be a mistake he made, and he can pardon himself for that mistake. So it's like he didn't do any mistake at all, and then he won't have any reasons to be impeached.
Can you say it again? I think I got lost somewhere in the middle. It started up good, and then I got lost.
Okay. If the president can pardon himself, then it would be paradoxical for him to be impeached. Because
good.
Presidents are impeached because they committed an offense. And if they can pardon themselves for that offense, then they have no reason to be impeached.
Not bad. So it's like a paradox. Okay, good. All right. Should Mr. Trump opt to pay himself this unprecedented courtesy? What is your understanding of this sentence? What is the idea? Opt to pay himself this unprecedented courtesy.
By using I'm reformulating, the journalist just wants to spotlight the fact that Mr. Trump that the personality of Mr. Trump could lead him to pardon himself, as he has no limits in the journalist mind.
So should we stop there, guys? Do you agree with him? Repeat?
The journalist does think that Mr. Trump's personality would lead him to pardon himself as he has no limits. So just by using this sentence, the journalist spotlights the possibility for Mr. Trump to pardon himself.
Did you understand better? You agree with him? Not bad? All right. What does the columnist mean when he says whether or not this norm is ripe for rethinking? What does the columnist mean when he says whether or not this norm is ripe for rethinking? What's this notion of ripe for rethinking?
You can create laws if you using paradox that seems impeachment I have no reason to be. If you can take another way to avoid impeachment.
What does the columnist mean when he says when you talk about a norm, it's something established, isn't it? And when you say it's right for rethinking, the idea is you're going to change something which is established. So it seems to me we're talking about society. And we're talking about at what point are we at in society collectively to change our thinking about something. It's the big subject that we had a few weeks ago about LGBT. I think society globally accepts the idea, without going into a long debate about it, about same-sex marriage, but that French society still probably has reservations about medically assisted procreation for a third party. So the idea is society is changing. We don't know, but maybe one day society will be ripe for that. So that's the idea. You know, it's like the fruit. When you buy it, it's not ripe. You wait 3 or 4 days, you put it on the window in the sun, and then it's ready to eat. So it's the same idea about things evolve in society. It's not a comment on whether something is good or bad. It's not a comment on progress or not. It's just a photograph of where society is at a certain point in time. And that you need a certain amount of debate before people are prepared to vote on something. Yeah?
It's whether or not society has evolved in a way that this norm doesn't suit it anymore. Might not suit it.
Huh?
Might not suit it.
No, I'm not. Yeah, of course. The idea is to take something which here in France, which social security. The idea that when you go to the doctor, you don't have to pay. It's kind of something which is like, we think it's normal here in France, okay? Whereas obviously, if you are in the States, you go and see a generalist, a GP, you're going to pay $350, and they think it's normal, okay? Probably one day, I don't know when, we will probably have to pay more when we go to see the GP, unfortunately, here in France. But clearly, no politician is ready to talk about that at the moment because Mr. Fillon started to talk about it, and it was like, wow, there was a major problem, you know? So, the problem of politics is knowing when the people are ready to start to talk about a subject, you know? And whether they're ripe for that subject or not. But it's what you said, right? Yeah, it's the same idea. It's a nice expression, I think. Yeah? Ripe for change. Clearly, if we think about Mr. Macron, what he voted recently, the new labor law, it was extremely difficult. The first labor law for Minister Comay, it was extremely difficult for her because the people as a group hadn't had time to really get their mind around the idea, to think about what was acceptable or not. They weren't ripe for that. And so there was a kind of an emotional reaction immediately to the law. And and the debate became a little bit irrational. I'm not saying that people didn't say right things or wrong things, just it became a little bit irrational. Because we'd had that first law, society was ready. It was a lot easier to vote the second law.
Is it not wise for politicians to make a law if there hasn't been any debate within the society about that subject?
I agree entirely. That I'm not saying. It's obvious to say, but it's better to have public debate before voting a law. It seems to me to be clearly obvious. It's an interesting subject. I was a little bit hesitant about the idea of President Macron coming to power and obtaining the right to push through laws without some kind of parliamentary vote. He clearly felt that the reforms that he wanted to push through were going to create partisan debate, and that it was going to be extremely complicated to form a clear opinion in the public opinion about what he wanted to reform, and that it was better to avoid having excessive debate about the subject. So the debate was mostly amongst professionals, wasn't it? Behind closed doors. And then the decision was announced to the people. I'm not sure that it's the most democratic solution in the world, but maybe in certain situations it's what's adapted. It's difficult to answer your question, huh? And sometimes I'm English, so I think that the state is there to serve the people, and that the people are not there to serve the state.
But sometimes it might be useful.
That's liberal thought. That's liberal thought.
It's a horrible thought?
Liberal.
I think, I may be wrong, I think that sometimes that the state, the French state, is somewhat suspicious of the people.
Sometimes it can be good to be ahead of your time. Like, for example,
Ataturk was an amazing person, definitely, and did a lot of.
He was ahead of his time.
He was definitely ahead of his time. But to come back to what you were saying earlier, we are applying the problem is not to be culturally anthropologically centered on what you do in your country. And so clearly, in terms of Ataturk, it corresponded to Western ideals. But I'm sure you could have found people in Turkey who felt that what he did was destroying traditional Turkish values. It's coming, I'm just rebounding back on what you said earlier. I think you have to be careful about applying the values you have in your country to other countries. And I want to say that I agree with that idea. It's very easy to be here in France, or to be sitting in London, or to be sitting in Rome or Madrid or whatever, and to think that, well, this is what they should do in Africa, this is what they should do in such and such a country. What works for us is based on our history, is based on our culture, won't necessarily work in another situation. And clearly the situation of Turkey and Ataturk was the westernization, to a certain extent, of Turkey. But maybe some people feel today that what Mr. Erdogan is doing, which is going in the other direction, personally, I don't feel very comfortable with it, but maybe some people in Turkey feel that's a good idea. It's complicated. Don't you think it's complicated? Yeah. It's complicated. It's complicated. Je sens que vous voulez partir, je ne sais pas pourquoi. Ça va, c'était intéressant? Oui? Ok. Demain soir, on va essayer d'accélérer un tout petit peu. Là, on était un petit peu lent ce soir.